Live from Miami, Florida, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Patriots Perspective with Christi Tasker. Your news behind the government's facade. Don't fall victim to propaganda or spend another 30 days in the tech gulag. Turn off your tell-lie vision and just listen. Hear the most mind-opening hours of your life as we interview whistleblowers and real patriots for uncensored truth. The Commie News Network and Fake Book cannot control the power of Jesus Christ. Therefore, they have no power over us. There aren't enough Vegas strippers to fake check what's coming. Put in your earphones and avoid the tech tyrants. Subscribe to patriotsperspective.com now and see the evidence and action items to help you take back your God-given rights, government, and expose Satan and his demons taking up residence in your community. Be sure to hit the like or rumble button and comment to tell us where you're holding the line.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a new year and welcome back to Patriots Perspective. Today's guest is an amazing one. But before we go any further, please allow me to introduce myself. I am Christi Tasker, your host on this journey where we are finding out the truth, one truth at a time. And man, every conspiracy theory I've had thus far has become reality, so much so that it's becoming concerning. But today's guest is someone many Americans are turning to as they question many things. They are questioning everything from government overreach to property rights and what it really means to live free. Brent Johnson is my guest today, and he is a nationally recognized speaker, author, and consultant on sovereignty, property rights, and freedom from the government that controls us. For more than 3 decades, Brent has been educating everyday Americans on lawful, practical ways to protect their assets and reclaim personal independence. Wow. He is going to teach us how to really live free. He has Freedom Radio and the Global Freedom Report, platforms dedicated to teaching constitutional principles, common law trust, and strategies for resisting government intrusion. We know all about that, don't we, Miami? Brett is also the author of The American Sovereign, How to Live Free from Government Regulation, The Pursuit of Happiness, Freedom, and the Human Spirit, along with the Quiet Voice of God. As the director of The Bound International, Brett has helped thousands of people understand their sovereign rights. So, Brett, please welcome to Patriots Perspective. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I cannot wait to see what's in store because this is a topic that is just, I find very fascinating. How do we get ourselves out of the matrix? How do we get out of this government control that we've been under for so long, sir?
Well, the first thing is to recognize the reality. The reason people have so much trouble with government is because the perspective that people have been fed. And by the way, the government does it all the time. Government tells you the first duty of government is to keep you safe. That's not true.
Right.
That's a fundamental falsehood, but most people buy into it. It's the government's job to take care of you. If you're hungry, the government will feed you, and they will take the money to pay for that from other people who may or may not be less well off than you. Okay? If you don't have the time or want to take the time to educate your own children, the government will do it. Government will put them into public school and indoctrinate them. Okay, and people, go along with that. If you are ill, the government will take care of making you better. Hopefully, that's not the role of government. It never was. So, to start this off, let's start out at the foundation of government. The foundation of the United States of America is the Declaration of Independence. It is not the Constitution. It is the Declaration. Now, attorneys will tell you the Declaration is not a legal document because the people who signed it were British citizens who didn't have any standing.
Interesting. Yeah. So
the
question is, do the attorneys actually have standing?
Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But the point is, the Declaration is the foundation. And Everybody knows the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the very next words in that document, the very next words are, to secure these rights, governments are instituted. Meaning, the function of government is to secure the free exercise of your God-given rights and do nothing else. Leave you alone. That's the purpose of government. Now, the problem we have is people are asking the government to do more than that.
Well, you mentioned something really early on that I thought, if you see a little furry friend pop up, this is Aston. But here in Miami, when you said the government to keep you safe, okay? And what's really funny is the mayor of Miami-Dade County, she starts out every speech, especially to women's groups, and she says, "Do you all feel safe? Do you feel safe?" She says it really calmly. And by the way, this is the same mayor, Daniela Levine Cava, that we're trying to recall because she can't balance a budget, spent almost over $500 million, not million with an M, but billion with a B. But safety is her number one thing, where she tries to make them out like make people feel very safe. So when you said safety, I was like, whoa, he has hit these politicians on the head.
No, and the truth is, freedom is not safe. Okay, freedom is chaos. Freedom is dangerous. Okay, because when you're free, you don't have somebody taking care of you. You're responsible for taking care of yourself. And that's what's been abandoned. Today, most people do not want to take responsibility for their own lives. And that's the God's honest truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look at whatever happens, whatever goes wrong, people have somebody to blame. The truth is, we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable, meaning unchangeable, rights. How many of you out there, show of hands, everybody, how many of you out there were created by the government?
Nobody.
Then you didn't get your rights from the government, and the government can never, ever take them away. You can lose your arms. You can lose your legs. You cannot lose your rights. People say to me, they're taking away my rights. I say, no, they're not. The only thing the government can do is violate your rights. And when that happens, there's an unspoken question always asked. What are you going to do about it? The American people have become emasculated. They don't think about this. They don't realize that if God gave you your rights, you are endowed by your Creator. God is the supreme sovereign of the universe. That means that every one of us is literally part of the royal family. Each of us is king or queen of his or her own life. That's the truth. You're the queen of your life. I'm the king of my life.
Yep.
Okay. It's my life. He gave it to me. It's my life. So why are you so quick to obey your public servants? They're not very good servants, but that's what they are. Their role is as public servants. And we are the rulers in this country. Now, you have to go back. If you go back to Old England, you know, we came out of Old England. In Old England, it was a two-class system. And most of the world at that time was a two-class system. You had the nobility and the commoners. Everything was done by the nobility. The commoners could not even own property. They couldn't own land. They could not participate in the making of law. None of that. In the beginning of the Declaration, it says that all men are created equal. And with all due respect, that includes women. Okay. All men are created equal. Okay. What that means is not that you get paid the same salary, not any of that. It means that there is no more two-class system. Mm-hmm. There is no class of people who are blue bloods who have more rights than anybody else. We don't have that. If anybody is the nobility here, it's us, because each of us is a king, each of us is a queen. Now, if you know with every fabric of your being that you're the child of the supreme sovereign of the universe, you're part of the royal family. You're a king, you're a queen into your own right. I've seen this. I've seen when people carry their royalty with them, bureaucrats step out of the way. I've seen it regularly. When you hold yourself as sovereign, meaning you're the supreme ruler of your life, the government actually backs away. They back down. They can't handle that. They really and truly can't. So what we've done is in our system, okay, in my book, The American Sovereign, How to Live Free from Government Regulation, at the beginning of the book, I have an organizational chart. You know, you have the president on top and the vice presidents and the, department heads and all that. So God is on top. We, the people, is beneath God and answerable to him. The Constitution was created by we, the people, and is answerable to us. And the government was created by the Constitution and is answerable to it. That's the pecking order. What's happened is the government has turned it upside down. And the way they've done it is essentially through criminality. I tell people all the time, my favorite founding father is Thomas Paine. I love Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, Benjamin Franklin. They're all great. But Thomas Paine wrote of government brilliantly. In the 18th century, he wrote an essay. Everybody read it at the time. And today it's still available. It's called Common Sense. And in it, he wrote of government, that government at its very best is a necessary evil. Now, most people, when they cite Thomas Paine, they say, Thomas Paine said the government is necessary. When I cite Thomas Paine, I remind everybody that government is fundamentally evil. And it doesn't matter who's in office. You may have very good people in office, but the nature of government is evil. And everybody who works for government, whether it's somebody who's elected or appointed, everybody who works for government seeks to and is trained to find ways to get around the limitations of the Constitution. The Constitution is simply a limitation on government. It tells government what it can and cannot do. And that's the way it works. So they're trained to find ways to get around that. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means the people who work for government are trained to break the law. Mm-hmm. That means they're criminals. Now, the character of criminals can be defined as criminals seek to take what's yours and make it theirs. And that's what government does. So government is not your friend. Government is your enemy. Government is the bad guy. And even though you may have good people in government, they are faced with the fact that the nature of government is evil. So I try to teach, or I teach people that reality. Because
let me ask you, so with government, we're heard like we need to take over the government, that good people, one of my slogans is, if good people sit by and do nothing, then don't complain when bad things happen. So like, for instance, I've tried to run for office. I've tried to, be a part of the code enforcement board. I mean, and it is true, a lot of times people that are already in those positions, or the other politicians, they don't really like it when people come in and they try to do the right thing by other human beings. Mm-hmm. I can attest to that firsthand.
Yeah. Patriot Andrew P. Napolitano, who used to be a judge in New Jersey. I call him a patriot because he's one of the few people I believe is genuinely sincere about the principles of independence and freedom. And he said to me once, he said that people go to government, they go to Washington, the federal government, and they go in there with the best of intentions. They want to change the world for the better. And then they get Potomac fever. That's what he calls it, Potomac fever. Okay, and they get swept up in the power, in the money, in the manipulation, in the control, okay, and they lose their perspective. That's what government does to people who try to change things and change. Look at what Dan Bongino, he finally just, after a year, he said, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. Yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I want to be able to spend my life doing good things.
Yeah.
And I can't accomplish that in government. So let's go back to the point, though. The point here is that when you realize that government is not your friend, then it puts you in a position where you can actually make decisions for yourself and your freedom. Now, you were endowed with your freedom. Your freedom comes from three areas: the rights to life, liberty, and property. Now, your life, it's up to you, your family, your friends, your associates, your brethren. We all need to watch each other's back. We all need to look out for each other. Yeshua said that love each other as I have loved you. And everybody talks about how well he loved everybody. And he's telling you, do the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, do the same thing. Love these people. What's happened is that the Constitution, when it created the government, empowered the government to do certain things. The people have decided that they want the government to do more than they are empowered to do. We want the government to feed us when we're hungry. It's not the role of government to do that. There are plenty of charities that are out there. There are plenty of churches and synagogues and temples where you can go if you are hungry and they will feed you. But it's not the role of government. Same thing with education. Same thing with healthcare. It's not the role of government. So, since it's not the role of government, when you ask the government to do these things, it can't just do them. It's not empowered to. So, it has to enter an agreement with you. And the first part of that agreement is that you have to waive your God-given rights. Now, I said before, you can never lose your rights, but you can agree not to use them. Mm-hmm. Think of your rights as a tool. I have a hammer. I'm just making an agreement not to use the hammer. Now, a hammer can do good. It can build things. A hammer can do ill. It can destroy things. Well, the same is true with your rights. Your rights can be used for good. Your rights can be used for evil. I want the government to take care of me. The condition is I have to waive my rights. Therefore, I'm putting my hammer up on the shelf and not using it. Then when you go into court because you have some kind of abuse and you go before the judge and you say, Constitution this, Constitution that, judges will actually say in open court, the Constitution doesn't have any application here. It doesn't apply. Why? Because they won't tell you why. Why? Because you have waived your rights. And so the Constitution that is designed to protect you from violations of your rights, well, you have no rights. You've waived your rights. So the Constitution doesn't apply here. That's the truth. That's the honest to God truth. And most people don't realize it. Real question is how important. I ask this on my weekly show, the Global Freedom Report. I ask it at the end of the day. What are you willing to do to protect and preserve your freedom? What are you not willing to do? You know, it's a simple question. Me, I'm willing to do anything to preserve my freedom, anything at all. I consider a gift from God to be more valuable than anything else. I remember Mel Gibson's The Patriot, the movie where his son died. His son died. Standing for liberty.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a terrible, terrible price to pay. But would you put your children in potential risk or danger if the alternative meant that you had to surrender your liberty? And then you have nothing to leave to your children, by the way. If you don't have your independence, your freedom, you have nothing of value to leave to them. Would you give up that freedom to keep them safe?
I don't think we knowingly give up the freedom, for sure.
No,
I don't think we knowingly give up these freedoms. So I think we have to identify what we've given up, because I don't think people realize what they have given up and what their actual rights are.
And that's exactly the point I was making at the beginning. First thing, we have to recognize what the problem is, recognize how we got there. Now, I said life, liberty, property. Okay. Life, as I said, we all need to watch out for each other. Liberty, the way you preserve liberty is by not entering into agreements to waive your rights. Okay. But the first thing I always recommend is you protect your property. And there's a reason for that. Okay. Your property rights are important because, as I said before, the government is staffed by criminals. Criminals seek to take what's yours and make it theirs. So the wealthiest people in the world know this, and they own nothing. Now, I'm not talking about Klaus Schwab, own nothing and be happy.
Be happy,
okay?
yeah.
But the truth is that the wealthiest people know about the principle of ownership and liability. And this is a universal principle. Ownership equals liability. The owner of property is always liable for damage caused by the property. Doesn't matter if you're the owner, a trust, a corporation, it makes no difference. Okay. But if you recognize that principle, you eliminate your liability, which means the government can't take anything of yours. What I do is I set up common law pure trust organizations. Now, these have been around forever. Plato is believed to have had one of these in the year 400 BC. I don't know if that's true or not. But we know that throughout medieval England, these trusts were around. The oldest trust of this sort in America was set up by Patriot Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death, Patrick Henry. Mm-hmm. And it was called the North American Land Company, and it existed for close to 200 years before it finally shut down. These trusts are outside of government control, and the Supreme Court has ruled on that numerous times. A common law pure trust is not under the control of government because it did not use the government to create it. It has nothing to do with it. These are outside of government jurisdiction. So to give you a little example.
Outside, let me just clarify as you go along. So outside of attorneys, outside of the normal court system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just clarifying for everybody. We got to remember that people don't know.
One of your regular courts does not have jurisdiction over this type of trust.
Right. Because people finally realize, like, family courts and the courts are all different. It's like their businesses operating for different causes and,
and those courts are not proper judicial courts under Article 3 of the Constitution. These are admiralty courts. Marine law operates in these courts. And I can tell you all kinds of stories about that, but I don't want to lose my train of thought here. First off, I'll see if we have time. I'll get back to it. So what happens is, just to give you an example, John F. Kennedy this is a true story. My producer remembers seeing it in the newspapers when she was growing up. Okay, it's a true story. John F. Kennedy, when you're a Kennedy, you don't have anything that you own in your own name. And he had a cat. And he set up a common law pure trust organization, type of trust we're talking about. And he had the cat owned by the trust, and it was the only thing in the trust. One day, somebody got scratched on the face badly by the cat. He said, okay, I've been scratched by a Kennedy cat. I'll sue. So he did. He won the case, and he was awarded the cat. True story. Everybody laughs. But there is a moral to the story. If one of Kennedy's mansions or yachts or Rolls Royces was in the same trust as the cat, it could have been attached to satisfy the damage award. But because the cat was the only thing in the trust, the guy got the cat. You can't take blood from a stone. You can't get more than it has. Now, when you take your property, let's say your house and your land, you put it into a common law trust. The trust now owns it. Now, a trust, any trust, statutory or non-statutory, a trust is a right of property held for the benefit of another party. You go to a fancy restaurant, you give the keys to your car to the valet to park your car. That is what's called an implied trust. It's implied because it's not written down. If it was written down, it would be called an express trust. So that valet has control of the vehicle for your benefit. That valet can go park the vehicle, and he doesn't need to say, hey, Christi, should I park it here, or do you want me to park it there? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to do that. because he has absolute control of that vehicle for your benefit. What he cannot do is, while you're in the restaurant having a nice meal, he cannot put the keys in the car and go cruising up and down the boulevard to impress his friends, even though he has control over it.
Yeah.
That would be a breach of trust, because that would not be for your benefit. That is how all trusts function. So
all trust, just to clarify, all trusts are supposed to be for the benefit of the trust, the trust itself, correct?
No, all trusts are set up as one party owns the property for the benefit of another party.
Okay.
So in the case of the valet, you would be the beneficiary. Okay. The valet would be the trustee.
Okay.
Okay. So he has control of the vehicle, but he has to use that control for your benefit. Now, okay, you put your house into trust. Okay. This is a common law trust. And you put your house into trust. And once the house is in trust, the trust will issue a warranty deed. You'll take it down to the county recorder, get it recorded, and the ownership of the property will be in the public record. That's important because now, if the IRS decides you owe it money and you want to argue with it, they can't go after your property because it's not yours. It belongs to the trust. However, you're the only one who can benefit from the property. If the property is sold, you get the proceeds. You and your family get to live there rent-free. Okay, you get to do whatever you want. You want to have a party there? You want to paint the walls in one of the bedrooms? You can do whatever you've always done as an owner. But now you're doing it as a worker rather than an owner. You have a contract with the trust. Your job is take care of the property. Your compensation is you and your family get to live there rent-free, as an example. Okay. So now if the IRS comes knocking, you can honestly say, hey, buddy, I just work here. You're going to have to go talk to the owner. And they cannot and will not go after that property because it is recorded in the name of the trust.
Okay. So obviously I have lots of questions here. Okay. So you said that you have to take the deed. So that would mean that you have to own the property outright, correct?
No. A mortgage is not a lien. A lien freezes title.
Okay.
If there's a lien, you can't transfer title. But a mortgage is what's called chattel, chattel. It is a type of attachment that is conditional. Okay, so you have to honor the mortgage agreement. You can't put the property in trust and say, screw you to the mortgager. Okay, that's fraud. And that will mess everything up. But as long as you're honoring the terms of the mortgage agreement, that property is now owned and it has been transferred into the trust lawfully. And then that lawful transfer is noticed to the public record. So now if the IRS does want to go after you, they simply can't go after it. It's not your property, but you're the only one who can benefit from it. Okay. That's the nature of how trusts work. The difference with the pure trust and most other trusts is the pure trust is outside of statutory control. They can't change the rules governing these types of trusts. And we've been doing these trusts for 30 plus years. We have never had a situation where the IRS has successfully attacked a trust, and they have attacked them. They've always lost. IRS hasn't. The DOD did it once. They lost. We've had individuals try and pierce the trust veil. They've lost. Nobody has been successful in 30 plus years in attacking these types of trusts. They are absolutely the best way to protect your property and your property rights, in my opinion. Okay. And do so in a manner that you can go about doing all the various other things that you've done in life.
Okay. So the questions that I know people are going to have here is that we have some questions coming up as for how, if somebody has had a mortgage, let's say in their case for 4 years, what should they do? Should they go for it and put their property in the trust?
Well, again, it's not a should question. Okay. The question is, how much do you want to live free? You want to be free from government control. The first step is take care of your property, because that way the criminals in government cannot go and threaten to take it when you stand up and refuse to comply. So that's step one. Step two, then you could decide whether you want to completely sever yourself from government control, which is a life-changing thing. You can do it. Okay. But if you do it, you give up all kinds of benefits that most people want. But the first step should always be, in my opinion, the property rights, because that's the key to what the government uses against you to force you into compliance. If you don't do what we say, we're going to take your house. We're going to take your bank account. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Okay. If you have nothing they can take, they leave you alone.
The governor of Florida right now is basically trying to do away, has recommended to different entities. He's even come into with our Florida chief financial officer to find overspend, government bloat in different local governments so that they could essentially prove that they are wasting so much money, basically that they are wasting your homestead property tax money. Mm-hmm. So if I put my property into a trust, how does that help me with my homestead taxes? Does it make it go up? Does it make me have to pay a different rate?
Well, there are a few things. That depends upon the district. Okay. It's different from place to place. I have some clients who have lost their homestead exemption and some who have not. It really does depend. However, the issue of property tax is a completely separate issue. And by the way, you can opt out of property tax, but it is not easy and it is risky to do. I don't want to turn this entire discussion into that.
Yeah, I'll have you back for different things. Yeah. So don't let me take you down a different route.
No, but that can be done. What you have to understand about all taxes in this country, all taxes are excise taxes, meaning they are taxes on a particular activity. If you don't want to pay the tax, don't engage in the activity. Problem is, the government keeps the information as to what triggers the tax from you. So you don't know, and what do we have? We have an adage here in America that is the only thing that's sure in life is death and taxes. It's not true. It's not true. I have opted out. Okay. And I am left alone by the IRS, and I go on the air. I talk to millions of people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was going to say, what are some of the lawful strategies that people could utilize that they're not utilizing right now to opt out of the taxation?
Well, you have to understand what the nature of the tax is. I'll give you an example. We'll talk a little bit about the income tax. Okay. The income tax is actually a tax on making money from the government. That's what it is. If you look at the Internal Revenue Code, which, by the way, in most pieces of law, most statutes, the definitions are at the beginning. In the Internal Revenue Code, the definitions are at the end. So if you were to read the code from beginning to end, you wouldn't even know what the meaning of the words were until you got to the very end of it. Mm-hmm. And the IRS will tell you that the income tax is for activities that are effectively connected with the conduct of a trade or business in the United States. That's what they will tell you. Now, most of you think, oh, I'm in business, that means me. No, it does not. Mm-hmm. If you and the entire definition section is Title 26, Section 7701A. Okay, if anyone wants to look it up. And you'll find a number of definitions. First off, United States means the District of Columbia, the District of Columbia, territories and insular possessions, but does not include the 50 states. That is not part of the definition. Secondly, trade or business. If you look in the definition section of that code, you will see that the term trade or business means, and I quote it, the performing of the functions of a public office. Oh. Well, if you are not working for the mayor or the governor or the president or some government agency, you are not engaging in trade or business, and that tax doesn't even apply to you.
Interesting. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I had on my show Joe Bannister, who is a former criminal investigator for the Internal Revenue Service. And he left because he couldn't stand the way that the IRS was lying to the people and ripping them off. And he's become a whistleblower of major proportions. And he and I had a great time. And he talks about how if most of you are not required to file a return. When you file a return, that information can be used against you. However, the Constitution says that you cannot be compelled to give information that can be used against you. Mm-hmm. People have asked the Internal Revenue Service, including Joe Bannister, for years, show me the law that requires me, a non-government official, to pay the tax. And nobody comes forward. Nobody can. There is no law. There is no actual law. What happens is the system is designed so that you can volunteer. And most people volunteer. They don't know how they volunteer. Fill out a tax return, fill out a W-4 form, fill out various forms, and those are the things that volunteer you into the tax. Now, I can go on for hours on this, and there is so much I want
That's
to
good for
address.
people to know. They can at least look that up.
There are options, and I would encourage you to get a copy of my book. It is a tremendous book. It is The American Sovereign, How to Live Free from Government Regulation. It is the #1 book on sovereignty in the world. And it gives you not only key information as to what's happened, how it's happened, and how to opt out of these various things. It not only does that, but it does it in a manner that you could check it out. I tell people in the book, don't believe a word that you're reading here. Check it out. I will cite the law that tells you you don't need to have a driver's license. I will cite the law that tells you you don't need, but I want you to look it up. I don't want you to just believe it because I put it in a book. I want you to go look up the law, and you will find that it's all very, very true. We have been misled. We have been turned into fodder for the government, and we were not put here to be that. We were put here to be the rulers of this country. It is ours. Now, you want to know how it happened? The Constitution itself is a whip and a chair. The government is the beast, the lion. If you put a whip and a chair in a cage with a beast, what happens?
Well,
nothing.
I was going to say.
Nothing happens.
Yeah.
No, the reason nothing happens is you're missing an ingredient. The ingredient is the lion tamer, the one who wields the whip and the chair to tame the beast and keep it in its proper place. We, the people, are the lion tamers in this society. And we have been sadly remiss in our duty to keep the beast that is government in its proper place. And so all that it has done, it's just followed its nature. It is evil. And it has followed its evil nature. And it's doing what it does because we never stopped it. Now, it's become, back in the 18th century, it would have been easy for us to stop it. Okay. It has become very difficult because we've allowed the lion to get out of the beast, out of the cage, okay, and do its dastardly deeds. But when you realize that we are the rulers and there really are things you can do, the trust is just an example of how you protect your property rights, and anyone can do that without having to take the steps to sever completely your connection to government. So that really is the first step that I give to people. But if you pick up this book, it will open your eyes. It will absolutely blow your mind how badly we have been ripped off. When I can tell you, I used to do a 10-hour seminar, and people would want me to go for longer. Who sits for 10 hours, Okay. But people would want me to go for longer because it really has been a genuine matrix where we don't have the foggiest notion, most of us, what has been done to us or what we can do to correct it. And it's complicated, it's lengthy, but it's also very simple when you consider, do I value my rights that God has given me? I mean, are those important to me? If they are not, change the channel. So if today you look at all the ways that Marxists are promoting. I mean, Mamdani in New York City, and the one in what's her name, Karen Bass over in L.A., and the one in Minneapolis as well. I forget that person's name. Okay, these are Marxists. They are promoting the idea to take from Peter and give to Paul. And historically, when you say you're going to take from Peter and give to Paul, you always have the support of Paul. And that's what you have here. We're going to make everything free. No, nothing is free. Everybody else is going to pay for it. Okay, we're going to make everything right. Mamdani was at least honest. He said in his inaugural speech, he said that individual liberty is not good. We need to have collective rights. We need to have the government make sure that everybody gets what they need. Okay, and the government is going to do that. But since the government is fundamentally evil, what you're doing is asking the devil to make your life better. And that request is destined to failure.
Yep. And there's no way to go back on some of this. However, there's a lot like based on your website. So if everybody would go to freedomradio.us, you'll see the books and everything that Mr. Johnson has spoken about. And we do have to break away from the matrix, Brent. And I really appreciate you being on to inform people about this, and also helping people, through your consultative services and through your books and everything. I actually know, like, your books are even trending on eBay. So they're that should tell us something right there. They're not going in the garbage. Because,
people buy many copies of my books because they loan them out and they never get them back.
Right, exactly. I was going to say the one that I saw on eBay was like from the 1980s. I wanted to say, so. And not a lot has changed either. And I think, in terms of the IRS and even our border control, a lot of people don't realize that the IRS is actually directly connected to border control. Their jobs are not always just regarding our taxes, even though we think that they are, like taxes that are coming in. They're actually for import taxes. And they're trying to, make sure that the taxes are collected at the port. And which also tells us, when it comes to tariffs and other things, that's where taxes are supposed to be collected, not by individuals unless we give them the authority to do so.
I'll give you a little tidbit about the IRS. The IRS was incorporated as the Internal Revenue Tax and Audit Service, Inc. in 1933 in Delaware.
Okay.
The parent corporation of the IRS is a private corporation called the Department of the Treasury Corp. That's not the U.S. Treasury. The Department of the Treasury Corp, which was incorporated in 1931 in Maryland. The parent company of the Department of the Treasury Corp is, wait for it, the Federal Reserve.
Oh.
So the Federal Reserve is the grandfather corporation of the Internal Revenue Service. Now, when you pay income taxes, that money goes up the corporate chain directly to the foreign bankers who run the Federal Reserve, which is a private corporation, and leaves the country. Not one penny in income tax. We don't have pennies anymore. Not one nickel in income tax goes to any government services. If everybody in the country stopped paying income tax today, there would be a massive infusion into our economy that is being siphoned out of it.
Interesting. So you're saying they would put money into the economy that's not currently going in.
Money you're earning you're sending it out of the country to the bankers.
Oh yeah, because I was going to say because you would actually have more to spend. In other words, like it's not like you're going to give us more. We're giving ourselves a raise.
Exactly. Instead of sending the money out of the country, you would spend it here in the country, and it would be a mass infusion. Here, let me give you another little tidbit here. Okay. I teach people how to. I've done this in the seminars. I would teach people how to intimidate a judge, for example. Okay. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't represent myself as a lawyer, but I have taught lawyers because they don't learn enough about common law. Everybody who works for the government is a bureaucrat. I wrote an article. If you go to my website, freedomradio.us, and look under articles by Brent Johnson, you'll see an article called The Bureaucratic Profile. And it's a great little article. In that article, it teaches you that all bureaucrats are the product of their training. They can do no more and no less than they are trained to do. That means that their behavior is in a very, very predictable box. You can predict what bureaucrats will do 100% of the time. We can think outside the box. That gives us a decided advantage over the bureaucrats. So, intimidating a judge. I used to do a skit in my seminars. Okay, let's just say, okay, the state versus Christi Tasker, driving without a license. Mm-hmm. How do you plead? I plead. I'm gonna play your part now.
Okay. Yeah. Please do.
I plead no TL record. Write it down. 3 words.
No TL record.
Null is NUL.
Okay. No.
TL is TIEL, and record. It means no such record. And it is, you will find it as a legitimate plea in American jurisprudence, which is a legal textbook. Okay. It's right there. It tells you it's a legitimate plea. So I plead no TL record. Now, the judge is going to say, I'm sorry, you can't enter that plea in this court. You can only plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest. I plead no TL record. I've already told you cannot enter that plea in this court. You can only plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest. And I continue to do that. I plead no TL record. Now, I guarantee you what the judge is going to do. The judge is going to, at some point, say, all right, I'm going to enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf and schedule this matter for hearing. That's how the judge is trained. Okay. The other thing the judge is trained is that the judge is the ruler, the absolute ruler in his courtroom. And he has to have control of everything, or she. Okay. There are people in the public part of that courtroom that are observing this interaction. Okay. So, when the judge says that he's going to enter my plea, I'm going to say back to the judge, very well, Judge, I never call him Your Honor. Very well, Judge. Okay. I understand you've entered a plea of not guilty on my behalf. Now, I'd like to know, by doing that, are you practicing law from the bench, or are you rendering a judicial determination? Now, if you ask that question, the first thing the judge is going to do is yell at you. What? Well, I understand you've entered a plea of not guilty on my behalf. I just want to know whether in doing so, you are practicing law from the bench or rendering a judicial determination. You must be doing one or the other. Which is it? And you stay on that point. Now, understand, there is not a judge on the planet that will ever admit to practicing law from the bench, because he'll be thrown off the bench immediately. Okay. So if you press the issue continuously, the judge is going to threaten you. He's going to get angry at you. And you just stay very calm and keep asking the question. The only answer the judge can give, at some point he will, is, I'm rendering a judicial determination. Thank you, Judge. Now, what just happened is the judge just rendered a judicial determination that you're not guilty. The case is closed.
Okay. Interesting.
I've taught this to lawyers, and they think it's great. They think it's absolutely great, because you know, if the judge cannot afford to lose control of, he will do anything to avoid losing control of his courtroom, because that's how he's trained. because he's a bureaucrat. He's a product of his training. And so he'd rather have you out of his courtroom at this point than try and fight, because he's not going to win this fight. He entered the plea. I did not enter the plea. I did not accept the plea.
Right. You know, what's really interesting when you're saying this is, attorneys, there's very few attorneys that will go to bat for any kind of constitutional law now, or even cite it in court, because otherwise they risk upsetting the judge, and then they have to go back before the judge. And recently I represented myself pro se, and they just were not following the law.
Pardon me. You should represent yourself pro per, not pro se. Okay. Pro se means you're representing yourself. Pro per means you are standing in your own persona.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So, this part is somewhat gone past, but it was very interesting. They were literally saying like, oh, a restraining order that clearly existed was on the record. I had a certified copy, didn't exist. And I'm like, but it does. It's right here. No, it was entered erroneously. Well, I don't care if it was entered erroneously. You still entered it onto the record, and it existed, is the point. It existed. So it is very interesting to me that they don't follow their own laws. They will literally try to say something did exist when it did not, or it does exist, and you're like, no, it doesn't. Can you? And if you ask them to see anything, I asked the judge, Your Honor, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I just want to know, like, where is this that you're talking about? Like, what are you talking about? And I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. They don't want to hear any of that. Like, nothing.
That's true, because they're criminals. Showing the law to a criminal doesn't do you go up to a bank robber sometime and say, excuse me, did you know that robbing a bank is illegal and you can go to jail for a long time? Yeah. There isn't. Yeah. He's not going to say, thank you, ma'am, I'm going home now.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't work that way. The other thing
is, it's a shocker, though. It is a shocker, Brent. It really, like, for me, it was like, I was like, what are we doing? Like, what is happening here? Like, what? Because, I didn't realize how out of control the court system really had become until you're in it yourself.
Well, you have media outreach. So that's important. That's a lesson that you can pass on to others. And when you do that, what I'm doing now, what you're doing now, we're planting seeds, and those seeds will germinate. The other thing, if you're ever in court and you're going to say something, always start off with "for the record." Those three words, for the record, because most of the courts you're in are not courts of record. And you want to find out, ask the judge first thing, is this a court of record or a court? It's called a court of record or a court not of record, which is, he'll tell you.
And then what about them charging people? Like, I've seen where they've tried to charge some people $7 a sheet to record, to record the record, for them to even to have a copy of the record.
No, you are in. If you're a party to the action, you're entitled to the record.
Okay.
If there is a record, but if it's a court not of record, yeah, they can charge you for the record because you're not entitled to any record.
Okay.
So whenever you say something, you always say "for the record," because you are actually making a record, whether or not they consider it a court not of record. This statement is for the record.
For the record. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So what about not only for the record, but when it comes to filing, when it comes to filing for the record, when you're just trying to make sure that things are on the record so that people can see them, the public can see what, your statements are or what the exhibits are that you're trying to place. What about them trying to actually lock people out when the court case is not even sealed? There's no sealed documents, there's no sealed anything, but they don't have them out for the public to be able to view them.
I would have made a nasty attorney if I had decided to do that. Okay, but this is why you don't go into court. The system is completely and totally corrupt. Totally. Okay. It is a money-making, revenue-generating system, and it has nothing to do with protecting your rights or protecting, anything at all except the courts revenue generating. Okay, that's all it's there to protect. That's all it's there to do. It comes back down to the first thing I said, which is government is fundamentally evil. You cannot sit there and expect something that is by nature evil to do what's right.
Yeah.
And people keep coming in and they say, oh, just file this document, just use this tactic. It doesn't work. I never go to court, okay, because it's not necessary. You can do everything you need to protect your rights if you fight your battles on the psychological battleground. That thing with the intimidate the judge was an example of that. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're smarter than they are. They're bureaucrats. They are limited by their training. You can think outside the box. And in so doing, you are stronger than they are if you just apply the psychology to what you're doing.
Well, it's kind of the same, and I'll say this: it's really very much the same in business. Whenever there's like a venture capitalist, say a Silicon Valley venture capitalist. I used to do a lot of pitching for technology in front of Silicon Valley for money for technology firms, and when I would go in, they would become very confused because I have no degree from Harvard or Yale or anywhere else in the Valley. As a matter of fact, I was actually offered free scholarships just to go and to even Harvard. And, it was really shocking. I mean, really shocking to the point where, and I was like, why is this? And it is a matter of they want to psychologically be able to change your mind to agree with their side of the coin, where you almost really don't ask any questions and you don't think anymore. And then they also know what kind of training you've had when you walk in the door, because they become very frustrated when they're not able to psychologically determine what you might be thinking before the negotiations start.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another point is, it might sound to you, to your audience, that I'm anti-government. I'm actually not anti-government. Okay. I'm not opposed to government. I just want government to behave the way it's supposed to behave. I'm anti-evil. I'm anti-corrupt government. But I'm not arbitrarily just saying all government is bad. All government is evil.
Well, let me ask you,
if it's kept in its place, there are good things that can come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. What actually got you into like even researching this? And I should have asked you that at the very beginning.
I used to tell people in my seminars that they should send a postcard to the IRS that says thank you. It would drive them crazy. Just thank you, nothing else. It would drive them crazy because it's the IRS that did it. I had a payment plan, and I was making minimal payments, and I got a notice from the IRS that I owed them more money, and I didn't have it, and I had no idea where I was going to get it, and I thought my life was over, and I was throwing furniture all over the place. And a friend of mine said, "You don't have to pay that." And I said, "What planet are you from? This is planet Earth. This is the income tax." No, you don't have to pay that. Go talk to my husband. So I said, "What the hell?" So I talked to her husband, and he introduced me to a woman who, a Native American woman, who became my teacher. Oh. And as I started to learn from her, I said, if you will teach me what you know, I will take it to the world. And I've done exactly that.
Wow. Okay.
When I learned enough from her, I then went and spent 2.5 years in the Marin County, California Law Library, good law library. Okay. And I started to research all the things that I was learning. I wanted to see if any of this is true. Okay. And I spent 2.5 years in there. And when I reached a point that I thought that I knew enough to be able to teach this, then, I filed various documents and stopped making payments on my payment plan. And the IRS and I went back and forth for a few months, and then they stopped and left me alone. Wow. And it's now been 30 plus years. And even though I go on the air and I talk about this, they leave me alone, because even if they decided I owed them money, I have nothing they can take. They can't take anything because my property is all protected. So they leave me alone. to live my life in freedom, which is the whole point.
Yep. Well, listen, we've brought up your website and everything, and I'll make sure to put the comments below. I mean, the link to his website below, everybody, for books. Make sure that you do follow Brent and
please put out the phone number. The phone number, it's a toll-free number, 888-385-FREE, 888-385-3733. We would love to hear from you. Please, you'll actually get a human who speaks to you. You're not going to get an AI. Okay, you'll get somebody who will actually have a conversation with you.
In America, Brent? In America?
In America.
Is your person in America?
Yes, I am. Yes, yes. In America, you'll actually have a phone number to call, and you can get a human to talk to you. Oh boy! So please, really, put the number out there: 888-385-3733. Get in touch with us. We'll help you we'll set up trusts for you. We'll protect your property. Get a copy of my book. It will unlock things that you would never believe. It will teach you how to live free from government regulation.
Yeah, well, I'm very interested in it myself. So I'm definitely going to go to the website, check it out. And I appreciate you coming on today to educate me and educate the audience so that we know, what can really happen, what's to be done. And, we all need to take our freedom back. I think we know that for sure. So thank you very much for joining me, Brett. Thank you, audience.
It has been my absolute pleasure. And I would love to come back if you'd like.
Yeah, I would love to.
And we could target certain topics.
Yes, I was going to say there were so many times that when you were speaking, I had so many questions. I was actually jotting down notes on my phone. So sorry if we were looking down, because I'm literally I've got to have Brent back on, because you're loaded with information, and we do really need to take it topic by topic to take people's freedom back. Normally I'm an extremely good interviewer, but you're such a great speaker that, I do have so many questions, but I didn't want to interrupt you without it, and have you kind of get off track, especially since it was your first time here. But we have a group, an audience that loves, to know about their freedom, what their opportunities are. And today you're really our first guest that has come on and, and explained some of the smaller ways that you can take your freedom back without having to completely come out of the matrix. Because, we do have a lot of seniors that listen in, and, they don't need to lose their Social Security. We don't want to, we don't want to tamper with big government in so many ways. And we have a lot of politicians that listen in, and I'm sure officers of the court. We have a lot of friends that are attorneys, and they're always learning from different things that they say. But they're like, remember, we have to go back before the judge. You can say whatever you want, but we have to go back before the judge. Whereas hopefully, I'm not going to live in front of a judge, because as you well said, I did go to mock trial when I was in high school and was a part of it. And several of my friends from mock trial are actually judges now. But I myself, I just, being an attorney just was not for me. Staying in one building, especially they're really ugly. So I first became a banker and then an interior designer. So, in my grown-up careers, everything comes full circle, though, for sure.
This has been a pleasure, and I would be more than happy to come back, as often as you like, and to
awesome.
Talk about things.
Audience, make sure you put the questions down below that you want me to ask Brent next time. I'm sure that you'll take a look at his website. If there's questions you want me to ask, put them down below this video. We'll check Rumble, we'll check YouTube, and BitChute, Brighteon. We'll make sure to check all of the platforms to gather your questions. And then you can also, we're actually going to have a question and answer session on Patriots Perspective coming soon, so that you guys can, gather everybody's thoughts into one place there. So that's going to be very exciting. And you can go on and support us there on patriotsperspective.com. And I appreciate all of you for being here. Let us know what you think. Let us know what guests you would like to see next, what questions you have for Brent. And God bless you, everybody. Brent, thank you again, and look forward to seeing you next time.
God bless you.
Remember, take action. Take action. Don't let big tech win. Share this video with a friend now. Most importantly, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.